I think I know my Halloween costume, Drew. We were just joking about it before we went live. I think I'm going to be a windsock. Go stand in front of a car dealership.
You got the frame for it, yeah.
You know, since I lost all the weight, I'm like shockingly lanky.
The wind's going to blow you around, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I did last year? So I had this giant broccoli costume that we used for one of the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And I put that on, and I looked absolutely absurd. Just this massive, like 2-meter tall broccoli walking around. Mm-hmm. And what I really wanted to do, because we get, in our neighborhood here, we get a lot of kids coming to the house. I tried to convince Fernanda to do this. I was like, I want you to cook a ton of broccoli. So like, instead of like giving the kids candy.
No, you didn't.
What we'll do is I'll open the door as a giant broccoli, and then I'll hand them a giant plate full of broccoli. And I thought this was hysterical. I was like, this is too fun. Like, we're going to record this. It's going to go viral on TikTok. Anyway, she vetoed.
You didn't even try it.
My broccoli dreams were destroyed in the cradle.
Well,
they never, maybe this year.
You would have traumatized some kids. I think you better not do that.
There's still hope, Drew. There's still hope.
It's like, that's as bad as like handing out toothbrushes or something like that. Like, that's worse, actually. Just some steamed broccoli. What the fuck?
Steamed broccoli served by a broccoli.
It's the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast with your host, Mark Manson.
Anyway, what are we giving a fuck about today?
Oh, Mark.
Or not giving a fuck about? What are we giving? What's happening?
We're giving a fuck this week. I'm giving a fuck anyway about friends. Friendship. That's right. We've talked about this a little bit before.
You just flew back to Colorado.
I did.
For a dinner.
So I've been splitting my time between, LA and Colorado. And I was out here and there was an anniversary dinner for some friends of mine back home. And I took a flight back. I didn't even ask you. I was like, I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission on this one.
I was hurt.
Yeah.
I
don't
deeply
think you really cared, but
yeah, it was like, oh, you left?
it got me, I was talking with some people and I was like, yeah, I flew back and it was like a 2-hour dinner that we had on a Friday night.
I'm going to be honest. Mm-hmm. Like when you told me like an anniversary dinner, I thought it was like your parents' 50th or something. Right. Or I'm like, oh, this must be a big deal.
Yeah.
The fact that you literally got on a plane to attend a dinner for 2 hours. Two things. One, you are a much better friend than I am. Like hands down, bar none. But two, I mean, it's given, sitting at LAX for hours, dealing with the airline bullshit.
Worst airport in the world.
Not to mention the money, like the cost and everything. So my question to you is, was it worth it? Like, how often do you do things like this?
I mean,
And is it worth it? Does it pay off?
Is it worth it? Yes, it was.
If you're a psychopath like me and purely looks at human interaction as as transactional, is it worth it?
It was worth it, but you're right. There was a lot of that. Like I was like, oh my, I mean, I slept like shit last week and it was the end of the week and we had a long week and going to LAX is the last thing you want to do, you know, on a Friday. And I was just like, oh my God. I was even texting my friends like, I'm really tired. I'm sorry if I'm not, whatever. As soon as I got to the dinner, everything just like, it was a beautiful evening. Yeah. They were able to open the doors at the restaurant, open the windows at the restaurant. It was beautiful. We sat, it was a small group of people. We sat for a few hours and just, and that was worth it.
So it was worth it.
Absolutely worth it. It was.
It's funny because I imagine most people wouldn't do something like that, especially in this day and age.
Right.
Like, maybe like 40 years ago, but like, I don't know. Like that, it is kind of unimaginable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing is that, I'm single right now. I don't have kids. I don't have like real big obligations to anyone else but myself. And so I put
no obligations.
I was going to say I have a flexible job.
Flexible working schedule.
Before I was rudely cut off. So I have a lot of things working in my favor that allows me to do these kind of things.
Sure.
Right? Sure. Of course, but there is also a cost associated with maintaining these relationships that I've decided to invest in.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, to me, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth it. Now, the cost thing too, I had a whole bunch of airline miles, so it really actually didn't cost me money to do that. I mean, there's little travel expenses I got to pile on top of that or whatever, and I had to use those miles. But I understand not everybody has that access or that they don't have the privileges around that. Sure. Yeah. I get that. But that said, it's something that I've chosen to give a fuck about is my friends.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I find it admirable because I feel like this is something, it's funny because you often hear like there are people who choose to invest very heavily in like a romantic relationship. Yes. There are people who invest very heavily in like a professional opportunity or professional relationship. It at least in our culture, I mean, it's probably different in some other parts of the world, but like making that choice of like, I am going to highly prioritize my friendships and really go, no pun intended, the extra mile for them, I think is not only rare today, but it like, I do find it really interesting and maybe like more of us should be doing. Like I definitely like this is an area of my life where I'm like I probably should invest more in my friendships. Like I'm a workaholic, I'm a homebody. Like I sometimes struggle to just like follow up with people with a text, you know, much less like get on a fucking plane and go to their anniversary. So this is definitely an area of my life that I wish I gave more fucks or I was better at giving fucks. So and it is a rare thing. Like I don't know anybody else who does stuff like that regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you asked if I do it, I've gone on a plane to go see friends plenty of times. Yeah. Throughout my adult life, I've done this. And even like there was times I didn't have much money and I was still like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go do this, a wedding that's halfway across the country or more. Yeah. I've done that. And to me, it's just like, yeah, because that's what you do. Yeah. That is what, like, to me, it's so self-evident. Like, if you want to like nurture these friendships, you have to nurture these friendships. Sure. Right? Yeah. I think a lot of people, you know, it's like, oh, sorry, I'm in LA and I've got work stuff going on, can't make it. To me, that's kind of like, well, then you can't really complain about not having friends in that situation.
Do you ever run into, because sometimes like, I will feel inspired and like want to reach out or like, you know, maybe I'll like pop back to New York for a friend's thing or go see somebody, you know, it's like so-and-so's birthday or whatever. But I don't know, like it's, especially if I haven't seen somebody in a couple of years, haven't talked to them a whole lot. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I worry. I'm like, well, is it going to be weird?
I've gotten over that.
Okay.
I just go for it now. Anytime that comes up for me, I just shoot somebody a text. Gotcha. Like anytime I start thinking about somebody, and that's been more recent. I think anytime that pops up, I'll be like, hey, was just thinking about this thing that we did or whatever a while back. How's it going? I don't hesitate with that as much anymore. Okay, for sure.
What would you say is like the Drew Burney principles of being a good friend, or like fostering good friendships?
Number one is showing up.
Show up.
It's showing up. And I was actually talking with my dad about this not too long ago, and he went to like a funeral or something that was within the family, and it was like not like immediate family, you know, it was a little bit removed, and he showed up and people were like, oh, it's good to see you. Kind of surprised we saw you. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what we do. We show up. And I think I just, from a younger age, it was like, you just show up for people. Yeah. That's rule number one right there.
It's so funny because it's so obvious. And I remember, you know, you and I did an episode earlier this year about adult friendships. And it's like, when you look at the research on how friendships are made, like the number one thing is frequency of exposure, like literally how often you physically see or speak to a person.
It's been wild to me to see how true that is, and or even just small little gestures of showing up in different ways. Like it means a lot to people. Yeah, it means a lot. And I mentioned, I think on that episode too, where I have reconnected with like childhood friends and either just through reaching out with them or getting on a plane and going and seeing them. Yeah. And it's a completely different relationship then. You get like, it's like a new friendship that you get to start again as an adult. And it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure if I have any good tips on like making friends, but I know like keeping friends. Right. That's kind of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. So principle number 1, showing up. What else?
Being first, like acting first.
Okay.
I think putting yourself out there first, always being like showing vulnerability, maybe what it is, or telling somebody like how much they mean to you, not waiting for that from them.
Inviting them to stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Reaching out, following up.
Yeah. You know, we have a group of my friends back in Colorado. We have like a dinner club, and we kind of get off track every now and then. But it's about once a month we try to get together, and it's so great because now everybody's like, oh no, I want to host. You know, like now everybody's like, they realize what it is, like offering, being the first to offer is actually like the right move here.
Yeah.
And showing up for everybody in that way is really, really important. Yeah.
What would you say? So the going first thing, like, I'm bad at that. And I don't know why. Like, it's funny. You know, I had a lot of social anxiety when I was younger, and there's definitely sometimes like some remnants of social anxiety. And it's funny because it really only pops up in very specific contexts. But for some reason, one of those contexts is like invitations, reaching out to somebody I haven't talked to in like 6 months, following up with somebody. And it's so silly. Like, I don't know. Like, I have these moments where I'm like, I don't know. I feel like a high school kid all over again who's like worried that the cool kid's not going to like want to hang out with me. So that's something that I need to like practice and get better. And I imagine it is a practice. You just, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
100%. Yeah. I've definitely found that over the years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing though too is just like help people. Maybe that's the same as going first. I don't know, but just if you can help somebody with something, like people really, really appreciate that. Now, again, this is like a maintenance thing, kind of a friendship maintenance thing. But, you know, I've had several of my friends tell me, you know, like, hey, if actually the couple that I went to go see for the anniversary, they said, if we ever got into a situation where we were in jail or, you know, anything like that, we would call you. We would definitely call you because we know that you're going to show up, but you're also going to have the ability to help us out.
Help with something. Bury the body and
yes, I would be very good at that.
Dispose of the evidence.
I do have a lot of shovels, so yeah. We could do that. Yeah.
I'd probably call you for that too.
yeah. It's really funny. It's just the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
It really is. That's really that's a true thing.
All right. Moment of truth though.
Okay.
Do you ever get frustrated? Because I imagine a lot of people don't reciprocate these principles. Do you ever find yourself getting frustrated with people?
No.
No?
I don't think I do.
It's really unconditional. Like you just kind of give and you're like, if people don't reach out back to you or do things back for you, you don't get frustrated or resentful or...
No, I mean, if it was something, I guess if it was like a huge sum of money or something like that, and then they just never talk to me again, maybe I would, but it's never been like that. I just find that, I don't know. You just, what else is there to do but help people in life? Honestly, what else is there to do? I know that sounds cheesy as shit. But seriously, when it comes down to it, like what else is there to do?
We're gonna Photoshop like you in
that sounds so cheesy.
In a Mother Teresa nun outfit, and then put in the cheesy cursive font like the what else is there to do but help people?
I'm not okay. Yes, I'm virtue signaling. Yes, you got me. Fine.
We'll put some PBS music under it, like
no,
light a candle.
But it's not even that. It's just, I mean, like
you're not wrong.
Hold a door open for somebody.
You're not
like
wrong.
Even down to that. Like just what else is there to do but help people?
I mean, I'm with you. Like, and I think ultimately, like philosophically, the things that feel meaningful in the long run are the things that we do for other people, the impact that we have on people's lives, and the relationships we build from that impact. It's so funny too, because like it is a lot of these things, they do sound very cliche, but I also think you're a little bit ahead of the curve. I think people are just too cynical these days. Like it's just
100%.
It's just it's too easy to like sit in your phone and look at a billion things and disagree with everybody about everything and just be like, that's lame. I'm not going to go do that. And make up an excuse to sit at home and, you know, jerk off with the cat. Like this is what our social lives have come to. I mean, I don't know. You have a dog, maybe. I don't know. Like whatever you're into, hamster.
Okay, sorry.
Whatever you're into, whatever you.
The cat is in the corner watching you. What is fucking going on here?
Back to the Mother Teresa.
Yeah, what were we
Back to the
talking about?
let's stick with the Mother Teresa.
Okay.
But I think it's too easy to do that.
100%.
And I definitely, again, I feel myself getting sucked into that cynical vortex.
Right. Well, yeah, the conversation with John Haidt, he talked about this too, right? Like that television probably, like, it didn't rot our brains, but it probably destroyed social capital.
It isolated us.
Yeah. And I would say, modern digital technology does that even more.
Yeah.
So absolutely, yeah. That's another, it goes back to the showing up thing, but I have a default basically to just say yes. When somebody invites me to something, I say yes.
Yeah.
And then, it's one of those things you get to the day and you're like, oh, I said yes to this thing. That happens all the time and I still go. And 9 times out of 10, I'm so glad that I went.
Yeah.
100%. So just, putting yourself out there, getting going. I don't know though. Okay. So that though is, again, that's a lot of like friendship maintenance stuff.
Sure.
And again, I have the capacity and like the bandwidth to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't have these other big relationship obligations in my life right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you got married, it'd ruin all this.
Well, okay, so is that true? Because I think a lot of people will say, "Well, it's nice. It must be nice. You don't have a partner and kids and this job that is just draining." And
I think so. Relationships and kids. It's not that it gets harder. There's more complexity.
Yeah.
Every time you make a friend or meet somebody, there's kind of like this internal process as you figure out, okay, does my wife like his wife? Like, is this going to be like a couple's friendship, which you have that's a thing? Is it like, oh, this is one of my guy friends, or this is going to be like her friend, or this is my friend, or whatever. And then I think when you introduce kids, there's like there's a third layer of that complexity, which is, does our kid get along with their kid? Are they close in age? Do they play well together? Then it's, do we get along with the parents? Could we travel with them? Oftentimes what you find is, and this gets frustrated when you're married, is, it's like my wife will meet somebody and they get along great. They start to become really good friends. And then I go meet the husband and it's like, we have nothing in common and we have nothing to talk about. And so then it kind of becomes this question of like, okay, do he and I just kind of like quietly suffer through an awkward, dinner or weekend or whatever, so that our wives can be happy or have fun, or do they just go off and be friends on their own? So there's a lot of like, I don't know, situations like that. But I think the principle is the same. You show up for people, you go first, you reach out first, and you be helpful.
Right. Yeah. And again, it goes back to the like understanding the trade-offs. I think if there are people who probably do sit here, they say, oh, it must be nice not to have kids, not to, be married and unattached to all these things and whatever. There's also, I understand that trade-off though. I don't have a stable partner and that security that's there for me. And instead I've put that energy into some friendships, which, when it comes down to it, my friends who are married or whatever, they have that stable one person they can go to for everything. I don't have that. Yeah. So I've traded that off.
I will say it can work in the other direction too. Like, it is really cool. Like, when you do find, it's hard to find, but when you do find that couple where you both like them both equally, like, and they both like you both equally, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really cool thing, but it's hard to find.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of my next point I was going to make, was the finding depth over breadth. Like, if you can find that couple, and you don't need to find 10 couples that you can hang out with. You probably need 1 to 2 couples that you guys can hang out with regularly. And I think you're going to be set. I joke, I don't have like tons and tons of friends. I have a core group of people that I can turn to.
Yeah.
And then, there's kind of the concentric rings, the circles, going further out. But I think focusing more on depth of relationships, especially as you get older, is definitely the way to go.
Drew Burney goes deep inside just a few people.
Cut that.
And now a word from our sponsor. All right, and we're back. Drew has come back from his submergence. What's on the docket today, Drew? What is brilliant or bullshitty today? What are we?
Brilliant or bullshit, Mark? Can YouTubers take the place of some of your casual friends? YouTubers, content creators, personal or public figures. What do you think of this?
I am the only emotional sustenance anybody needs.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Smash that like button, and I too will be your friend.
Yeah.
Wait, no, is this really a thing? Like being like what is this?
So there's this study. It came out in Nature too. So a high impact journal,
prestigious journal,
which doesn't mean it's right, but people perceive what they call parasocial relationships, which are basically one-sided relationships. So like a YouTuber, a celebrity, even fictional characters, even too. People can actually. They report anyway that those relationships that they have, those one-sided relationships they have, are actually more fulfilling than just like a casual acquaintance, in-person interaction that they might have, or relationship. You might have a repeated relationship with somebody who's kind of considered like a casual friend.
Okay.
They actually find it more emotionally fulfilling to have a one-sided relationship with a public figure of some kind.
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
And that actually might, and all kidding aside, that actually does make sense to me. Only because it's a casual friendship or a casual acquaintance.
Right. So it wasn't the same. It wasn't the case with close personal relationships. Those were valued the
most valuable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me because as somebody who, like, if you watch streamers, for instance, I'm a huge gamer, as most of my fans know. I've been watching Twitch almost daily for the last 10 years. I follow a lot of big streamers. I like watching it. To me, it's actually very fascinating to watch streams, like watch the chat, the community around a streamer and how they interact with them. And then there's been a few streamers that I've been fans of and I've interacted with. So I get that because it is very like the streaming culture. And I think to a less, like TikTok feels a little bit this way to a lesser extent. I think some of the way that people use Instagram through like Instagram stories or Snapchat. A lot of these forms of social media, it is extremely parasocial. It's basically optimized for a parasocial relationship. Most of the social media stuff that I do or that we do, it's like very unidirectional. It's like broadcast, so it's like I post stuff I write on Twitter and Instagram, and we craft these highly produced YouTube videos, and then we produce these This is probably the closest thing we have to like a parasocial relationship with the audience. But like, there's a lot of social media out there that is very much geared and optimized to make people feel like they're hanging out with a fun and cool friend. I understand too why it's more satisfying, because it requires no investment. It's always entertaining. Like the person you're a fan of or whatever, like they entertain you, they make you happy, they make you laugh. And there's zero downside or social risk. Whereas when you meet a stranger or an acquaintance, like let's say you go to a birthday party or something, you meet somebody new, there's like all this awkward stuff that happens of like, am I saying the right thing? Was that joke weird? Am I being funny? Like, does this person like me? There's kind of this, like a lot of the awkward stuff that you have to feel out when you meet a new person and you're not really sure if they like you or not. So I get it. I actually totally get it. Yeah. That I believe it. I don't think this is bullshit. I think it's brilliant.
Well, and the authors of this study too, they kind of theorized that there's kind of this shift going on right now. And it's for a long time in the kind of media research landscape, it's been thought that people kind of glom onto these relationships, these parasocial relationships, because they don't have anything else in their life. They're using it in place of something else in their life. They're saying actually this might be like kind of a healthy way to feel like you have some sense of either belonging or in this case, what it really is that they feel like these relationships are at least responsive to them. Not directly like they're not responding to them, but they're responsive to my needs because they're talking about things that are important to me, or they're making content about things that are important to me.
And they are the person in aggregate. Again, I'm thinking of streamers here. In aggregate, they are like, you are part of 2,000 people in the chat that the streamer is responding to, So it's like, if the chat kind of like gets upset about something or starts, trashing the streamer or making jokes or whatever, like the streamer is going to react. So there is some form of interaction that's going on. And I also agree with that too. Like I definitely, again, like there are a number of people that I follow on social media that I have somewhat of a parasocial relationship. Like I'm a fan. I enjoy just kind of sitting around watching them play a game. I think they're funny. I think their community is interesting or entertaining. And to me, it definitely supplements my social life. It's not a replacement for my social life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, another interesting finding from this study was they did 3 different studies in this, and the last one they did was they kind of well, first of all, they gave people a self-esteem questionnaire.
Yeah.
And kind of divided them into high and low self-esteem, and then they had them write about a time in which they were socially threatened in some way, like being ostracized or neglected in some way from a group or whatever it was, and then they asked them another series of questions about these parasocial relationships with YouTubers or whatever they had. The people with high self-esteem still thought, yes, during these times they would help assuage some of this like social threat that I had.
Right.
The people with low self-esteem just consistently, doesn't matter if they're socially threatened or not, they consistently turn towards them. So I think that might be hinting at the beginnings of a toxic relationship with this. So I'm wondering about the limits here. What do you think about that? Obviously, like if somebody's crazy and they're stalking, I'm not talking about that level.
There are definitely unhealthy parasocial relationships. And I definitely do think there are streamers and creators who kind of foster a toxic relationship with their audience. They kind of thrive on antisocial behavior, and then the audience kind of gets the vicarious thrill of the antisocial behavior through the streamer. And I think it can just, it's another case of like attracting a lot of very low self-esteem people and then like having them live vicariously through your risk-taking and your like egregious behavior. To kind of like get them, I guess, hooked on your personality to a certain extent. There's a lot of culty type stuff that goes on. I think it's kind of impossible to talk about this without bringing up OnlyFans and just like the insane numbers behind OnlyFans. Not that I am familiar with OnlyFans. I'm actually, in seriousness, I'm not familiar with OnlyFans.
I've never even tried to do that.
I've never signed up for OnlyFans, but I've heard stories of just like insane shit that's happened on OnlyFans and like absurd amounts of money that are paid to usually women for like very toxic behaviors. I do know that like there are a number of models on OnlyFans that just like have entire teams of fake people messaging their fans on their behalf, like flirting with these like desperate, lonely guys. So as with any human relationship, there's of course permutations of toxicity within parasocial relationships. But I do think that the parasocial thing, I think it's very interesting. And I think this is one of the few cases that I think social media is a marked improvement over, say, television or film.
Okay.
Because in the TV era, people would have parasocial relationships with just this like fictional image on a screen.
Right.
It's like people would become a Tom Cruise fan and obsess about Tom Cruise when really it's like all you just saw him in Risky Business and Top Gun. Like you literally know nothing about the guy. Like he turned out to be a head case and like nobody knew. Whereas social media, maybe you're not getting like the full authentic version of the person on social media, but you are getting some facet of their actual personality. And it's driven much more by authenticity. Like the people who tend to become famous online, they tend to be famous for being who they are, not because they're playing a character in a movie or not because they're like, on stage performing something. It's like, they're in their room, they're being who they are. They've got this quirky or interesting personality. They're like really attractive or entertaining in some way. And they're able to foster an ethos within their community that people like being a part of. And so I think that is actually like a much better form of parasocial relationship than say when we were growing up and just like had fucking posters of Cindy Crawford
or obsessing over
some random celebrity
from
totally.
Okay. Yeah. So what is this though? Like obviously we have not evolved to even be able to keep up with an environment like this. What is being hacked about our brains, do you think, in this situation? So I find it is very interesting that like people rate them higher than their just casual in-person relationships, but lower than their close connections. And yet there's a lot of loneliness going on.
Sure.
People say they want more friends. What is it hacking in our brains?
Well, I think it removes the friction. Like it allows you to feel socially connected and part of something with with zero friction, zero cost. The problem is that the ceiling on any parasocial relationship is extremely low. Right? Like it's easy to get in and get a dose of it, but the satisfaction that you get in week 1 or month 1 is probably it's probably never going to get much higher than that. Whereas with a casual acquaintance, meeting that random person at a party, having those awkward conversations, stumbling through a couple weird jokes or whatever, that can eventually evolve into a very deep and satisfying friendship. Like the ceiling on in-person interactions is infinitely high, whereas the ceiling on online parasocial interactions is extremely low. It's just easy to hit that ceiling. So I think it's path of least resistance.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked about this internally about the podcast. Podcasting is very different in that people listen to it while they're doing something else. And, it's like when we make a YouTube video, people are just sitting down to watch the YouTube video. When I write a book, people are just sitting down and reading the book. But with podcasting, statistically, most people are listening to this right now in their cars, cleaning the kitchen, taking out the trash, in the gym. And so there is, one of the lessons, we talked a couple episodes ago about lessons we learned from the first year of podcasting. One of the lessons I definitely learned is that this medium it's much less about, sexy hooks and hitting people in the face with a bunch of value. And, it's much more, you're kind of hanging out with people as they go about their lives, and you're kind of a companion to them. And so, I mean, it's definitely a reality in what we work on and think about for sure.
Well, and I mean, I do it as well. The podcasts I listen to, I see it as
100%.
This is a parasocial relationship.
100%.
And so that's why, I'm calling brilliant on this one too. It's not bullshit.
It's all brilliant. On that note, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. What sort of questions we have this week, Drew?
Well, I have a couple of questions. One from Julie. This was submitted on YouTube. She asked, is it possible to have a fulfilling life without friends?
The data would suggest no.
Hard no, actually.
Yeah, a pretty hard no.
Yeah.
We are very much wired for social relationships, like a group, being a part of a group, feeling a sense of belonging. If you look up anything about psychological needs, belonging is one of the first and foremost ones towards mental health. I don't know how true this is. I don't know where this statistic originated, but there is a statistic that I've heard forever, which is that social isolation is just as unhealthy for you, or has just as much of an effect on your life expectancy as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
I've seen that somewhere too. Yeah.
Which is pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
I do think friends or some sort of community or group that you feel like you're a part of, is absolutely fundamental.
I think the word you said there was belonging too. The thing I had to, figure out was I felt like I could fit in a lot of different places, but I didn't feel like I belonged in a lot of different places. And that was all dependent on the people. It was all dependent on friendships.
Yeah.
I've lived in a lot of different spots and, felt like, I can fit in here. That's, I can survive. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Having a sense of belonging though, I think is that's next level.
What is it?
I just feel like I can be myself when I feel like I'm in a place where I belong. I don't feel, and I'm sure you feel this in your marriage. You've mentioned this before.
Sure.
You feel like you can just, there's no pretense. There's no guard up.
Yeah.
I feel like I can just be me without having to perform, without having to prove myself in any way either too. It's just like a level of unconditionality there that I can feel. And I think for me anyway, that was developed over time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing that came. I know some people that go somewhere and like, I belong here. This is it.
Right.
I know it.
Right.
And whether that turns out to be true or not, I have no idea, but there's people who feel that instantly. For me, it's a slow burn thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny because this is actually this is very relevant in my life at the moment because my wife really misses New York.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation where she says, I feel like I belong there and I don't belong here. And I feel kind of the opposite. I feel like in New York, I can fit in New York. I can do the New York thing. But here I feel like myself much more. And to me, it's, you know, in my conversations with her and like really digging into this and like what this is, we kind of discovered that a lot of it's reflective of personal values. Like for me, it's LA. I feel like not even LA, just like Southern California, the environment nudges me into being a better version of myself.
That's an important point too. Yeah.
Whereas in New York, the environment nudges me into being a worse version of myself. It kind of nudges me into a lot of my addictions and compulsions and anxieties.
So what was that though? What, like the decision around moving from New York to LA, what was the conversation around that? Because you had to have been thinking of the trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
What was the conversation of that with your wife? I mean, you know, she's from Brazil.
Yeah.
You're from Texas. New
Sure.
York is cold as shit in the winter. Was that, I mean, you know, you're like, oh God, I'm tired of these winters and we're just going to move, and you didn't think of all the other things around it? Or
it's funny. I have a very contrarian take on weather, which is I feel like, so the two things that here's a hill I will die on.
Okay.
If you love where you live, or if you feel like you belong where you live, weather and taxes don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that about Colorado. So yeah.
anytime I hear somebody start like discussing taxes or weather,
right,
I'm like, they should move because they clearly don't love where they are anymore.
Right.
Another great.
Can you imagine like moving somewhere for all the taxes? I'm like,
oh, dude,
what the fuck?
You get some rich friends. Like, it
that's
comes
true.
up all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Which kills me because I'm like, dude, like, you're really going to uproot your whole life to save like, 8% on your income. You're already making $1 bajillion. But it's funny, actually. I think Derek Sivers actually said this to me privately once. He said everywhere in the world has the same tax rate. You just pay in different ways.
Oh, that's 100% true. He would know too. He's lived all over.
He's paid taxes in like 5 different countries.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely a staunch believer of that. But like, the conversation around leaving New York, it was very much, I mean, New York it burns you out pretty hard. Like it's overwhelming. There's so much going on. She and I also lived there during the pandemic. We went through we went through, I mean, we had been there for 6 years. We went through the pandemic. We had a bunch of like very bad experiences with where we lived, which New York is absolutely famous for its atrocious housing and services.
Right.
So like we just had a nightmare scenario with one of the apartments we lived in. And so we came out of it, just like we went to New Zealand because I was doing the movie. So we spent a few months down there. And while we were down there, we were like, we got to get out of New York.
Yeah.
Like it's too much. We need to leave. And we actually spent a lot of time in New Zealand, and we went to part of the South Island. We spent most of our time in Auckland, and we went to Wellington. We went part of the South Island, and she was like, is there anywhere in the U.S. that's kind of like this? Because I could do this. I was like, then it's Southern California.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, then we came out here. We spent a few weeks here that summer. We looked at houses. We hung out with a bunch of friends, and we loved it. But it's funny because there is there's the honeymoon phase of a location. And say a group of friends. And then there's the actual relationship with the place you live and with the group of friends. And for me, the honeymoon phase turned into like a very great relationship. I've got my gripes, as with every relationship. Sure. There's a downside to living anywhere. But, for her, I think she realized it's not a perfect fit. So it is interesting. That's a question I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. It's like, what is belonging? And it's because there's a certain aspect of it you can't control. It's just, you just feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And for the longest time, I just thought, well, I don't belong anywhere. That's how I felt. And then once you do, you're like, oh God,
yeah.
You know, like this is what I've been missing the whole time. And it's sad to me that a lot of people don't find that.
I would compare that feeling to relationships. Like it's
well, okay. That's the other question.
Okay.
Can you be happy without a romantic relationship?
Yes, you can.
I would agree.
Again,
with
the
that.
data backs that up.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who are single. So here's the one. This one comes up. We had a question come in through the newsletter recently that I did not answer in the newsletter because I told Val, I was like, I'm going to write 8 pages if I try to answer this. But a number of questions have come through around sex. Like, I would throw it there. We can throw a third question to the end of this. Can you be happy without sex?
That question actually came up too. I didn't include it here, but
okay.
Yeah.
So let's do romantic relationships first. So you can totally be happy throughout your life, completely single without a romantic relationship. That said, people in romantic relationships, it cuts both ways. So if the relationship's good, you will be happier than you were if you were single, and if the relationship is bad, you'll be less happy than you were. Fucking common sense.
Right.
But it's the sort of thing like it's I guess risk reward type thing. So it's better to be single than in a bad relationship, but it's better to be in a good relationship. Like on average, you will be happier in a good relationship than no relationship.
Well, what do you think about turning your friends into romantic relationships?
Well, dude,
I think that's a great way to do it. I don't know, but
I would argue that. So it's funny the fun thing about getting married is that everybody you've ever known, every old person you've ever known, starts just giving you unsolicited advice.
Okay,
of like what to do, what not to do. You actually learn a lot about your like extended family about some of the shit that they say to you. But it was interesting, Fernanda and I, we noticed that like when we got married, all of the old people in our families who were still married and still happy, they all said the same thing. They said the friendship has to come first. Like if you're not friends, nothing else will last. Or like the best way it was put to me is that everything else is going to come and go. The sex is going to come and go. The attractiveness is going to come and go. Like their career is going to do great. It's going to do bad. Your career is going to do great. Everything's going to be in flux all the time. The only thing that's going to keep everything like tethered together is a strong friendship. Yeah. If the friendship's not there, you're going to just be tossed, like in a storm.
Yeah.
So that made a lot of sense to me. And I, as somebody who's been married 12 or been with her for 12 years, that feels very true. It's like every year is different. Our lives change constantly. She and I both change quite a bit. We're both very different people than we were 10 years ago. But the friendship is like what holds everything together.
Right. Yeah. And the anniversary party I went back for, or anniversary dinner, they'd been together 15 years since they were like late teens, or like babies, late teens, early 20s, like in college they met.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that they say the same thing. There's no way you can make it through that without being really good friends.
I feel like any happy couple I've ever talked to about this, they all say it. The friendship has to come first.
Right.
And it's funny. It's similar. It's like the tax. So sex is the taxes of relationships. Like anytime people start complaining about sex, it's like, okay, there's no friendship there. Like,
okay.
Like they've lost the friendship because I have found that like when people are unhappy in the relationship, that's when they start getting upset about sex. That's when they start getting upset about like, well, he spends this money and, I think we should be saving more and like, or like she should take the kids to school more often. They start arguing about chores. They start arguing about like, all like the kind of surface level stuff.
Right.
That if there's a happy, stable friendship there, yeah, you'll argue about it, but it sorts itself out because it's like when you're happy together, you're both willing to compromise and like be like, you know what, I'll take the kids to school.
Yeah.
I'll do this. Like she'll do that. Whatever. But when there's not a friendship there, it becomes a power struggle. And then it's like, well, you know, I'm not going to give this up because you didn't give that up. And you're not giving me this, so I'm not going to give you that. But if you give me that, I'll give you this, right? Like,
would you treat a friend that way? Like,
no,
right? Yeah,
no, that's like you'd fucking stop being friends with that person.
Right.
But for some reason, in a romantic relationship, a lot of people think that this is like completely justified behavior.
Right, and it's because they're not friends. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I would also say too, the best relationship advice, like the best dating advice, is to go make new friends.
Yeah.
Not necessarily even to date them, but you're going to meet more people.
Yes.
That way, and then you also start from that like friendship.
Sure.
As a priority type of thing. You see how relationships with just friends work, and then to get into relationships after that. I think that's, I don't know. I don't think I've ever really turned a good friend into a relationship. That's never really happened with me, but I've met a lot of friends, or met a lot of people I've dated through friends.
I feel I've heard of that happening. I don't think it's very common, but I would be very curious to see if there's any data out there on marriage success based on how you meet. I imagine there is.
Yeah.
I imagine meeting through friends is probably the most successful way to like find a partner. I imagine maybe meeting through work is another one. I imagine dating apps its hit rate is not great.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to look into that.
Who knows?
That's a good one to look up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Maybe that's the next brilliant or bullshit thing. Yeah.
Could be.
All right. Cool. Well, that's all for this episode. Be sure to submit your questions. You can either comment on YouTube or send them to podcast@markmanson.net. Please be sure to follow the show, like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. It helps us know that we're doing a good job, helps us feel like we have a parasocial relationship with you. What is the weekly wisdom this week, Drew?
It comes from the great philosopher Bruce Lee. Love is like a friendship caught on fire.
Ooh,
very fitting.
Fire emoji. Fire emoji. All right, on that note, see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast is produced by Drew Burney. It's edited by Andrew Nishimura. Jessica Choi is our videographer and sound engineer. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.